Welcome to episode 1 of the Monday Night Revue, a podcast where I talk about true crime, the paranormal, and weird, fascinating historical stories. I'm also going to have some special guests on to tell me the story that fascinates them or true experiences they can't explain. But today I'm going to start off with a story that I've only found out about recently despite being a lifelong true crime fan, the Riverside serial killer. This all takes place in Riverside County, California, situated in the south of the state of California. On the 30th of October 1986, a man out collecting cans for aluminium finds the body of 26-year-old Michelle Yvette Gutierrez stuffed in a drainage ditch. She had been strangled with severe trauma to her anal and vaginal areas. Ligature marks on her neck and stab wounds to her face, chest and buttocks were also apparent. The autopsy revealed that she'd been strangled while the mutilation took place. On the 11th of December 1986, Charlotte Jean Palmer was found 25 miles from where Gutierrez was found. Her body was so decomposed they were unable to find out her cause of death. At first, they're not sure if this was linked to the Gutierrez case, but the discovery of Linda Ann Ortega, 37, in January 1987 near Lake Elsinore seems to confirm that there is a serial killer on the loose in California. Naked and mutilated, she's been dead for about 3 days. Alcohol and cocaine are in her system. She's a part-time fast food restaurant worker and had been arrested for sex work. On the 2nd of May 1987, Martha Bess Young, aged 27, was found in a ravine near where Ann Ortega had been found. She's naked and spread-eagled. She has also been arrested for sex work, and drugs are found in her system. She's been dead for about 3 weeks, and Young had lethal quantities of amphetamines in her system, which they think killed her as she was being strangled. So, a task force of around 14 detectives is put together. California's had more than its fair share of serial killers: the Grim Sleeper, the Golden State Killer, the Night Stalker, and the Hillside Strangler, to name but a few, and they knew it would take a good team to track this one down. Throughout this case, the killer seems to be really aware of what the police are doing, and at this point either moves location for a while or stops. Anyone who knows anything about true crime knows that it's unlikely that they stopped, but nothing happens until the 27th of January 1989 when Linda May Ruiz, 37, is found with her head buried in the sand on the beach at Lake Elsinore. She's got sand in her mouth and throat, and death is by asphyxiation. The 28th of June 1989, Kimberly Little, aged 28, is found in Cottonwood Canyon. She's a sex worker. She's got alcohol and drugs in her system, and death is also by asphyxiation. This is the first case where they find fibres and pubic hair not belonging to the victim is found, so that's huge. This is literally the first clues that they've found. On the 11th of November 1989, Judy Lynn Angel, aged 36, is found bludgeoned and mutilated northwest of Lake Elsinore. She's got sex work and drug arrests. She's got defensive wounds on her hand, and death resulted from a crushed cranium. On the 13th of December 1989, Christina Leal, aged 23, is found in Quail Valley. She's fully clothed with no apparent mutilation or violence. She's got a rap sheet for sex work and drugs, and this is where first tyre tracks are found at the scene. But when they get to the autopsy, one stab wound to the heart is discovered. So she was clearly stripped, killed, and then redressed afterwards. The chest wound would have proved fatal, but she actually died from asphyxiation. And what is the most horrifying bit of this, I mean, it's all horrifying, but she has a light bulb inserted into her womb, completely unbroken, which must have taken a really long time to do, according to the doctors. And it's a really specific kind of light bulb. So again, this is a huge clue, and there's more fibres and hairs found. On the 18th of January 1990, near Lake Elsinore, a jogger finds a woman semi-naked. It's Darla Jane Ferguson, aged 24, who's a sex worker. She's strangled so severely that she nearly bit her own tongue off. There are tyre tracks found matching those from a previous crime scene. So now they're getting some tyre tracks. They've got some hair that hasn't belonged to the victims. They've got some fibres, and they've got this really unusual light bulb. On the 8th of February 1990, at an orchard in Highgrove, a nude body is found with pieces of grapefruit on and around the body. She's Caroline Miller, a sex worker and drug addict. She's been missing for a month. She has multiple stab wounds to the chest, more pubic hair is found. And what's really weird about this one is the detective, Bob Creed, who's working the case, his grandfather used to own the orchard, and it feels really personal to him, like not a random spot that they've chosen. And again, does the killer have a link to the police? Do they know him personally? On the 6th of November 1990, Cheryl Coker's body is discovered hidden by branches not far from where Caroline's body was found in the orchard. She's severely mutilated. Her right breast has been completely removed and laid next to her. And this time there are shoe prints discovered at the scene. So although the horrible mutilation has taken place, death was by strangulation. 21st of December 1990, a janitor at a factory finds the nude posed body of 27-year-old Susan Sternfield, who's also a sex worker, and she's been strangled, but there's no sign of mutilation. And on the 19th of January 1991, Kathleen Leslie Milne, age 42, is found near by the road near Lake Elsinore, strangled, having been rendered unconscious by several blows to the head. So public outrage is growing. All of these bodies are being found. Cases being featured on America's Most Wanted, and the task force is now up to 20 police officers. And people just want this guy found. It's been going on for years. On the 27th of April 1991, Cherie Michelle Pazer is found in the flower bed of a bowling alley parking lot. She violated pose, and she has a toilet plunger inserted into her vagina. So this is not only a really public place, but it's just such a horrific scene to find. Detective Bob Creed is interviewed amid accusations that the police are dragging their feet because the women seem to be primarily sex workers. Creed says he doesn't care what their occupation is. He's really disturbed by what's going on, but although they are now getting evidence left at scene, crime scenes, they've got no place to start looking. 4th of July 1991, Sherry Ann Lathan is found by picnickers. She's a sex worker and has drug use charges. Her hands wrapped around a nearby branch, so it looks like the killer left her alive, and she crawled slightly before succumbing to her injuries. Cat hair is discovered on the body, and the friends, when they're interviewed, say she didn't own a cat, and no one it knows her to be in contact with a cat. So this is added to the criminal profile that they're building on the serial killer. On the 15th of August 1991, a man in a grey van picks up sex worker Ali Whitehead near the University of California, Riverside. He gets angry and starts assaulting her, and she jumps out. He drives down the road, picks up her friend Kelly Hammond, 23, and she's later found naked and strangled, and her body is still warm when it's found. So Ali is able to describe the man for an artist's drawing, and also the van and the red sleeping bag that's in the back. The fibres found matched a red sleeping bag. So when they've been building the criminal profile, they've found hair at the scene of the crime, but they've also found these red fibres that they said would come from something like a sleeping bag. So the fact that she's mentioned there's a red sleeping bag in the back of his van is amazing. So they believe he commits the crimes in the van and then carries the bodies in the sleeping bag to where they're found. They've also found tan and white cat hair, so they're forming an idea of what he's like and what they're going to find when they find him. They believe he's married or lives with someone who works nights, so he's got time to carry out these crimes. The thing with the light bulb and all the posing and stuff implies he's not in a hurry. They find shoe and tyre imprints, cat hair, red fibres, and now they've got a witness and a description of a van. So in hours of this, television stations are broadcasting this image that they've now got. On the 13th of September 1991, Catherine McDonald, 31, is found in a field. She's been raped and murdered, and this was so gruesome that the Detective Creed is physically sick at the scene. She's had her right breast removed, but this time the killer's taken it with him. Initially, they believed it wasn't related because she's the first black victim, but they find the tyre tracks, they find hair and footprints, so they confirm what type of tennis shoe it is. And what's really upsetting about this, if you watch it, there's an episode of Real Detective on this case, and this bit is just upsetting because when they go to notify Catherine's next of kin, they find her 3-year-old daughter hiding in the dark downstairs. Catherine had gone out the night before to take the rubbish out and had just not returned, and they find her daughter waiting for her to get back. On the 30th of October 1991, on Summerholt Drive, Delilah Zamora Wallace, aged 35, was found by a driver who initially thought she was a mannequin. She's a sex worker, drug addict, and mother of 5. She died from asphyxiation. On the 23rd of December 1991, Eleanor Ojeda Caceres, who's 39, is found roads away from the police station. She's been strangled and her right breast is missing. She has sex work and drugs charges, and the police are very sure that it's very deliberate placement of the body so close to the police station. So far, they've discovered 5 different types of tyres. So they researched which type of van can use all 5 different versions of these tyres. And there's only one. It's a 1989 Mitsubishi. So they put out a call to look for this van. On the 9th of January 1992, a Mitsubishi van is pulled over by a policeman for a traffic violation. And luckily, because the policeman is ace at his job, he asks the man to open up the back and sees a red sleeping bag. And so he makes an arrest. And the driver is William Lester Suff, the Riverside Strangler. So he is born in August 1950 in Torrance, California. William Lester Suff is the eldest of 5 children. He's got one brother who's addicted to drugs and one who's a convicted paedophile. He's a government stock clerk who's been known to impersonate police officers. He's described as a friendly nerd by his neighbours, and he often babysits for them. When he's arrested, he's questioned for hours and denies any involvement, and it's really sad because it happens before Detective Creed can get there, so he's worked really hard on this case and doesn't get to interview him. They take blood and hair samples and arrest him on suspicion of murder. The detective knows they need evidence and they don't have any, so he goes to search Suff's apartment. They find knives, rope and binding material, and his young wife is there and she has no idea what's been going on. She works nights, and the detective also found the tennis shoes. They used the type of light bulb found in one of the victims. And out of the back, there's a truck full of tyres, and his wife says he's always playing around with his van and changing the tyres on his truck. They also have a tan and white cat. So William Lester Suff's gone to prison in 1974 for beating his 2-year-old daughter to death, and though he was sentenced to 70 years, he was released after 10. So between 1986 and 1992, he raped, stabbed and sometimes mutilated at least 13 women in Riverside County. He's an avid carpooler, and he'd worked as a government stock clerk delivering furniture to the police, and on a number of times had delivered desks, chairs and equipment to the task force investigating his crimes. At one point, they even used his phone to speak to a witness on the case. In 1995, William Lester Suff is convicted of 12 counts of first-degree murder and a single count of attempted murder. He was sentenced to death after a 10-minute jury deliberation and is serving his sentence in San Quentin, where they currently have a moratorium on the death penalty. So he's going to sit there for a long time with around 700 other death row inmates. Thank you so much for listening. I'm sorry that was a rather grim listen. I'll be back next time with the first of my special guests. It'd be great if you subscribe, because then you'll get new episodes straight to wherever you listen to your podcasts. Send in your favourite stories, and I'd love to know what you'd like me to talk about. And until then, stay safe, be kind, and always check the back seat before you get in the car.